Something wasn't right. I kept noticing strange cars slowing down near my barn, shadowy figures watching from a distance. Then, police sirens. HOA Karen was up to something, and before I could even wrap my head around it, I found out her insane plan. She wanted to take my land and turn it into an incinerator. Not because she had any legal right to it, not because she offered to buy it. No, she just decided it should be hers. But she didn't realize one thing. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. What happened next? Oh, she never saw it coming. All right, before we dive into this absolute roller coaster of insanity, I need you to do me a solid. Drop a comment down below and tell me where you're watching from. Trust me, it seems small, but it massively helps spread these wild HOA stories to people who need to hear them. And while you're at it, go ahead and destroy that like button, slam that subscribe, and ring the notification bell so hard Karen herself would call the cops on you. Oh, and you won't believe how this one ends. This is not an easy story for me to share. It took me a lot of courage to finally speak up, and I am grateful to this channel for giving me a platform because what happened to me is happening to people every single day. And if we don't talk about it, if no one stands up, these kinds of injustices will keep destroying lives in silence. My name is Peter Myers, and I'm a farmer. I don't live a lavish life. Every single day is a battle to keep food on my table and make ends meet. My land? It's not just property to me. It's my livelihood, my survival, my only way to provide for myself. Every morning I wake up before the sun, tend to my animals, work the fields, and pray for good weather. Farming isn't just a job, it's a way of life. It's in my blood, passed down through generations. Fast forward to meeting the antagonist of my tale, HOA Karen, president of the most unbearable HOA to ever exist. She ran her little suburban paradise like a queen ruling over peasants. She dictated lawn colors, mailbox styles, and even what kind of curtains people could have. But there was one problem in her little kingdom: me. I had a barn, a beautiful stretch of land right on the outskirts of her perfect community. It wasn't part of the HOA, but to her, it was an eyesore. Not because it was messy or rundown, no, that would be a logical complaint. Karen had bigger plans. She wanted an incinerator to dispose of community waste, and my land was the perfect location. Now let me explain in simple terms what an incinerator is. It's a massive furnace designed to burn trash at extremely high temperatures until nothing but ash remains. It's supposed to reduce waste, but it comes at a price: thick smoke, a horrible stench, and the constant noise of burning garbage. It wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a death sentence for my farm. The fumes could harm my crops, my animals, and even my own health. And Karen? She didn't care. Why? Because it was close enough to be convenient, but far enough from their pristine little neighborhood that she wouldn't have to smell the burning trash. She wanted to keep her community looking and smelling fresh while dumping all the filth onto me. And in her mind, since she was the HOA queen, she could just decide my land was now hers. But she didn't start with an offer. Nope. She started with intimidation. First, it was letters, fancy fake legal ones, typed up on expensive HOA stationery, demanding I consider the greater good of the community. I ignored them. Then came the warnings, vague threats that my property could be deemed a health hazard if I didn't comply. I still stood my ground. Karen wasn't just trying to pressure me, she was trying to break me. But she underestimated one thing: I wasn't going to roll over and let her take what was mine. I had worked too hard and sacrificed too much to let some power-hungry woman take away the only thing keeping me afloat. She thought she could push me out, but what she didn't know was that I was ready to push back harder. One morning, I stepped outside to feed my animals, only to be met with a sight that made my heart pound. A police car was parked right outside my barn, then another and another. My throat tightened as I watched officers step out, scanning my property like they were casing a crime scene. At first, I thought, this has to be some kind of mistake, right? Maybe they were lost. Maybe they were looking for someone else. But then reality hit me. My gut churned as I took a deep breath and walked forward, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can I help you, officers?" My words came out firmer than I expected, but my hands clenched into fists to hide the tremble. One of them, a tall, stocky officer with cold, assessing eyes, stepped forward. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he let his gaze sweep over my barn, my land, like he was already judging me guilty. Finally, he spoke, his voice clipped. "We received reports about unauthorized property use." My stomach dropped. My heartbeat drummed in my ears. "Unauthorized?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "This is my land." "We have reason to believe it falls under the HOA jurisdiction," the officer continued, barely glancing at me. I let out a breathy laugh, not because I found it funny, but because it was so ridiculous, so absurd, that I couldn't believe I was hearing it. "That's impossible," I said, shaking my head. "This land has never been part of the HOA. Check the records. I own every inch of this place, free and clear." The officer's expression didn't change. He didn't even flinch. It was like he had already decided I was guilty before I even had the chance to explain. "Sir, we need you to step away while we conduct our assessment," he said, his tone making it clear he wasn't asking. Panic shot through me like wildfire. "Assessment?" My voice rose. "What assessment? You can't just come onto my land and act like I don't have a say in this." Another officer, a younger man with a hesitant look, stepped forward. His eyes flickered with something. Sympathy, maybe? But before he could speak, the stocky officer cut him off. "Sir, we don't want any trouble, but if this land falls under HOA jurisdiction, there are legal steps that need to be followed." I could feel my control slipping. My voice wavered, but I forced myself to stand my ground. "And who told you that?" I asked, my chest heaving. "Let me guess, Karen, the HOA president?" The officer hesitated for a split second. That was all I needed to confirm my worst fear. "You have no right," I said, my voice breaking now. "You can't do this. This land is all I have. It's my home, my livelihood. You think I can just walk away? Let someone take it from me because they feel entitled to it." Silence hung in the air. The younger officer looked away like he couldn't face me. The stocky one just exhaled, rubbing his temple like I was an inconvenience. "Sir, if you refuse to cooperate, we will have no choice but to take further action." I felt something inside me snap. "Then do it!" I shouted. "Arrest me for standing on my own land. Charge me for protecting what I built, but I'm not leaving, and I'm not backing down." My voice echoed into the morning air, hanging heavy between us. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in the officer's eyes. I had made my stand. Now it was up to them. This wasn't just about her wanting my land. This was about power. HOA Karen wanted total control, and if I didn't hand over what was mine, she would make my life unbearable. She thought she could break me down, isolate me, and leave me with no other choice but to surrender. First, she tried to use legal force. She pushed to have my land annexed under the HOA, twisting words and manipulating documents. But that failed, because facts were facts, and my land was never part of the HOA to begin with. She lost that battle, but she wasn't done. Next came the police harassment. They patrolled my property like I was some kind of criminal. They claimed they were monitoring my activity, acting as though I was the one breaking the law. But all I was doing was living my life, working hard and taking care of my farm. Still, Karen wasn't satisfied. She needed a new way to destroy me. That's when she turned to the most vicious weapon in her arsenal, social sabotage. The rumors started small. I overheard whispers at the local grocery store, snippets of conversations that sent chills down my spine. "I heard he's got illegal buildings on his land. Did you hear he threatened the HOA? They say he's refusing to cooperate and causing trouble for everyone." It didn't take long before the entire neighborhood was talking. People who used to smile and wave at me suddenly avoided eye contact. Conversations would die the moment I stepped into a room. The friendly greetings were gone. Now there were only hushed tones and judgmental stares. But it got worse. My farm depended on the local community. I sold fresh eggs, dairy, and produce to my neighbors, people who had been loyal customers for years. But after Karen's rumors spread, those same people stopped showing up. Orders were canceled without explanation. The local store, which had always stocked my produce, suddenly had new suppliers and didn't need me anymore. My income, My only source of livelihood was crumbling right in front of me. I tried to reach out. I asked a few neighbors, people I had known for years, why they were suddenly keeping their distance. The responses were vague and awkward. "You know how things are," one of them muttered before walking away. Another just shook their head and mumbled, "I don't want any trouble." Trouble? I was the one under attack. Karen had twisted the story so much that people genuinely believed I was the villain, that I was the one making life difficult for the neighborhood. Meanwhile, she sat comfortably in her HOA throne, watching the chaos unfold like some kind of queen playing a sick game. Every day, I watched my sales drop lower and lower. Bills started piling up. I had employees, a few good men who helped me manage the farm, and now I was struggling to pay them. I saw the worry in their eyes, but what could I say? That I was being taken down by lies? That my entire life was being destroyed by one entitled woman's need for power? At night I barely slept. The weight of everything sat heavy on my chest. I could feel my future slipping away, and for the first time I wondered if maybe, just maybe, Karen was winning. But then something inside me snapped. Why should I be the one to suffer? Why should I be the one to lose everything while she sat back and watched me crumble? No, I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. If Karen wanted a war, she was about to get one. She then tried to take me to court. It wasn't enough for Karen to harass me with constant police visits, dirty looks from neighbors, and blatant intimidation. No, she wanted me gone for good. And with her husband being the police chief, she had just the weapon to make it happen. One morning, I got a knock on my door. 2 officers stood there, stiff and cold. One handed me an official-looking document. "You've been served," he said flatly. I unfolded it with shaky hands. Karen was pressing charges, land violations, trespassing, on my own land. My stomach twisted. I knew this was corruption at its finest. They weren't just trying to scare me anymore. They were trying to destroy me. The court date came faster than I expected. I barely slept the night before, running over every possible outcome in my head. What if the judge was in her pocket? What if they actually pulled this off? My land, my livelihood, everything I had worked for. It could all be ripped away because of one power-hungry woman and her crooked husband. Walking into the courthouse, I could feel the weight of Karen's smug stare from across the room. She sat there, dressed in an immaculate blazer, whispering to her lawyer while her husband sat beside her, arms crossed like he owned the place. The moment our eyes met, she smirked. She thought she had already won. The prosecutor stood up first, reciting a rehearsed, ridiculous argument. According to them, my land had somehow been annexed under the HOA's control, and because I'd continued using it without approval, I was in violation. He spoke with an air of confidence, as if he actually believed the nonsense he was spewing. Then they paraded out their so-called evidence, stacks of documents, many of them completely falsified, maps with redrawn borders, statements from HOA members claiming I was an uncooperative neighbor. But the worst part? A fabricated police report signed by none other than Karen's husband himself, the chief of police. My lawyer, a sharp-witted bulldog of a man, stood up and wasted no time ripping their case apart. "Your Honor, I'd like to bring attention to the fact that the chief of police, the man overseeing this case, is the husband of the plaintiff." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Karen stiffened. The judge adjusted his glasses, his expression unreadable. "Is this true?" he asked, turning toward Karen's husband. There was a pause, a long, agonizing pause. The chief hesitated, his face draining of color. "Yes, Your Honor," he finally admitted. Silence fell over the courtroom. Even Karen looked rattled for the first time. My lawyer continued, "Not only is this a conflict of interest, but the evidence they presented, completely fraudulent. My client has lived on this land for years, legally and without issue, until, of course, the HOA decided they wanted it for themselves." The judge exhaled sharply and shook his head. "I've seen enough. This case is dismissed." Karen's face went from pale to burning red in seconds. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked to her husband for support, but he wouldn't even meet her eyes. And just when she thought it couldn't get any worse, the judge leaned forward and said something that made her entire world collapse. Not only did the judge rule in my favor, but he also hit Karen with a cease and desist order. The words rang through the courtroom like a bell of justice. It meant she was legally forbidden from coming near my land, much less trying to claim it again. The sheer relief that washed over me at that moment was indescribable. Finally, after months of harassment, intimidation, and legal battles, I could breathe. I could sleep without worrying that she would send her minions, or worse, the police, to terrorize me again. But the judge wasn't finished. His next words made the air in the room crackle with tension. Karen had to pay me. And not just a token fine. She was ordered to pay both general and specific damages. A legal slap in the face that she never saw coming. For those who don't know, general damages cover the emotional and psychological toll a person suffers due to wrongful actions. The anxiety, the stress, the sleepless nights, I was compensated for all of it. Specific damages, on the other hand, deal with actual, measurable financial losses. The damage to my crops from the constant police patrols driving through my property. The legal fees, the time I lost fighting a battle I never asked for, all of that was accounted for. The sum? $250,000. $250,000, a number so high that Karen visibly gasped in the courtroom. Her lawyer's face turned pale, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw real fear in her eyes. She thought she could bully me into submission, but now she was paying the ultimate price for her arrogance. And then, just when she thought it couldn't get worse, it did. The courtroom was already heavy with the weight of her downfall when a court officer stepped forward and handed the judge a note. He glanced at it, then looked straight at Karen's husband, the chief of police. "Mr. Howard," the judge said sternly, "I've just been informed that due to the severity of your actions in this case, higher authorities have taken notice. A call has been made from above. Your job is no longer yours." The room went dead silent. Karen's husband, once the untouchable chief of police, was fired on the spot. His power, his badge, his career, all gone in an instant. Karen looked at him, her mouth trembling as if she wanted to scream, but no words came out. This wasn't just a loss. This was public humiliation on a level she never imagined. One moment, they were the town's power couple, lording over everyone like royalty. The next, they were the most disgraced people in the community. I felt a mix of emotions, vindication, relief, and even a tinge of disbelief. After all the pain, after all the fear, after all the nights wondering if I'd ever win, I had beaten them. The downfall of HOA Karen was nothing short of spectacular. After the court ruling, the HOA board called an emergency meeting, one that would decide her fate. The air was thick with tension, the once loyal board members now whispering amongst themselves, casting side eyes at the woman who had led them into disaster. Karen, ever the manipulator, strutted into the meeting with her head held high, her usual smug confidence barely masking the panic in her eyes. She took her seat at the head of the table where she had sat for years as the unquestioned ruler of their community. But tonight, everything was different. As soon as the meeting started, voices rose in anger. "Karen, you put us all in danger," one board member snapped. "You dragged this HOA into a legal nightmare for your own selfish reasons," Karen scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "Selfish? I was securing something for all of us. That incinerator would have benefited this entire community. If I had won, you would all be celebrating me right now." Another member shook his head, arms crossed. "But we didn't even need the incinerator, Karen. We've been using waste bins and scheduled disposal services for years without any issues. This whole idea was yours and yours alone." A murmur of agreement swept through the board. Another member spoke up. "You pushed this incinerator project without consulting any of us. You made it seem like it was a community necessity, but it wasn't. You wanted it, not us." Karen's nostrils flared. "You should be grateful I even fought for this. I have led this HOA for years. Without me, this association is nothing, nothing. And now you all turn on me? Backstabbers, all of you." The murmurs grew louder. The HOA board had once followed her blindly, but now they saw her for what she truly was, a woman who had gambled their reputation, their security, their money, and lost. One woman stood up, her voice shaking with controlled rage. "Do you even understand what you've done, Karen? We now owe $250,000 in damages to Peter Myers, money we don't have. And do you know where that's coming from? Our pockets." Karen went pale for a moment, but quickly recovered, forcing out a dry laugh. "Oh, please, we'll find a way. Maybe raise HOA fees." The room erupted in outrage. "Absolutely not!" someone shouted. "We are not paying for your mess." That's when the final blow was delivered. The vice president of the HOA, a man who had once been Karen's closest ally, stood up and dropped a thick file onto the table. "Effective immediately, Karen, you are stripped of your presidency. You are no longer a representative of this community." Karen gasped, shaking her head in disbelief. "You can't do this. I built this HOA. I made it what it is today." The vice president's voice was firm. "And now, you've destroyed it. This is the consequence of your actions." Karen's husband, usually a silent observer in HOA matters, stood and slammed his fists onto the table. "This is outrageous. You're making a mistake." A sharp laugh cut through the room as one of the board members leaned forward. "Oh, now you have something to say? Where was all this energy when your wife was dragging us into a lawsuit? Sit down, Tom. No one here cares what you think." Another voice chimed in, dripping with mockery. "Yeah, Tom, maybe you should have spoken up when your wife was busy playing dictator. Too late now, buddy." Tom opened his mouth to argue, but the vice president held up a hand, silencing him. "No, we're done listening to the both of you. We've lost enough because of your arrogance. Your words mean nothing here. This meeting is about cleaning up the mess you made." Karen turned to the other members, her voice now shaking. "You don't understand. This was for the good of the community. If I had won, you would all be thanking me right now." A woman in the back scoffed. "And if you had lost? Oh, wait, you did lose, and now we're the ones suffering the consequences." The room fell into a heavy silence. Karen's reign was over, and everyone knew it. Days later, the reality hit them hard. To pay the court-ordered damages, they were forced to sell their home, the very home they had once lorded over the neighborhood from. The price? A humiliatingly low amount, as word spread of their downfall, and no one wanted to be associated with their disgrace. Then, one night, they vanished. No moving trucks, no farewell speeches, no explanations, just gone. Neighbors woke up to an empty house, the windows dark, the once perfect lawn now left to wither. Karen and her husband had fled in the dead of night, too ashamed to face the consequences of their own greed. And me? I stood on my land, and took a deep breath of victory. Justice had been served. And I want to take a moment to thank this channel for helping me get my story out. Because today my business is thriving, and no one will ever take advantage of me again. And that, my friends, is exactly how you shut down entitled people for good. If you loved watching this showdown, do me a favor. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a story like this. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. More insane stories, more wild justice moments. So stick around, and I'll see you in the next one.